Am I wrong for refusing to take the lock off my daughter's door until my in-laws move out? Honestly, I don't even know where to begin. This situation has been brewing for months, and I'm at a point where I feel like I'm unraveling in my own home. Every night, I lie awake replaying everything in my head, overanalyzing, questioning whether I went too far or maybe if I didn't go far enough. But no matter how much doubt I have, there's one thing I'm sure of: I'm a father, and when it comes to protecting my daughter, there's no backing down. Not this time. It all started about 10 months ago, when my brother-in-law, Sammy, went through a divorce that left him with practically nothing. It was an ugly, drawn-out battle, and when it was finally over, he had lost his house, his possessions, everything. As much as I tried to stay out of the drama, I couldn't sit by and watch him fall apart with nowhere to go. My wife, who has always been the type to put family first, didn't hesitate for a second. She insisted that we open our home to him and his two daughters, Olivia and Sloane, who were both 18 at the time. I wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea, but I understood the situation. Sammy needed help, and no one else in the family was stepping up to offer a solution. If we didn't let them stay with us, where would they go? As much as I hated the idea of disrupting our lives, I couldn't say no. So I agreed, temporarily, or so I thought. At home, things were already busy enough. My wife and I have a 16-year-old daughter, Zoe. She's the kind of kid every parent dreams of: quiet, responsible, and respectful. She keeps to herself most of the time and never causes any trouble. But ever since Sammy and the twins moved in, Zoe has been withdrawing even more. She and her cousins were never particularly close, but I figured they'd find a way to coexist, at least civilly. I didn't expect them to become best friends, but I also didn't anticipate the friction that was about to unfold. It started off with little things. Zoe would come to me looking frustrated, saying that Olivia or Sloane had taken something from her room. At first, it was minor stuff, maybe a phone charger, a hairbrush, or some makeup. It seemed like typical teenage behavior, nothing to get worked up about. When I mentioned it to my wife, she barely acknowledged it, saying, "That's just what girls do. They borrow things. It's no big deal." I wasn't convinced, but I didn't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, not yet. I tried to rationalize it. After all, Olivia and Sloane were going through a rough time, with their parents' divorce appending their lives. Maybe they just needed some time to adjust. But then it escalated. Zoe started telling me that it wasn't just borrowing anymore. The twins were outright taking her things: clothes, makeup, phone accessories, even her school laptop. They were walking into her room as if it was their own space, rifling through her belongings and taking whatever they pleased without so much as asking for permission. I could see how much this was bothering Zoe. It wasn't just a physical loss of her stuff. It was the blatant disrespect for her privacy and her personal space. I could feel my own frustration building too. It's one thing to borrow a sweater, but your laptop? That's a whole other level. I went to my wife again, this time with more urgency, trying to explain that this wasn't normal behavior, but she brushed it off, just like before. "They're girls," she said. "This is what they do. It's part of growing up." I could hardly believe it. This was not just girls being girls. This was a violation of boundaries. But both my wife and Sammy seemed to think it was harmless. In fact, Sammy even laughed it off once, telling me, "Come on, man. They're not stealing. Girls borrow each other's things all the time. Zoe will get over it." But Zoe wasn't getting over it. She was getting angrier by the day. And to be honest, so was I. The lack of support from my wife and Sammy made me feel helpless, like my concerns were being dismissed, and worse, like Zoe's feelings didn't matter. Then came the breaking point. Zoe had been saving up for weeks, her own money, mind you. She had been doing extra chores around the house and passing up on things she wanted just so she could buy this one makeup kit from MAC. It cost $60, and for her, it wasn't just makeup. It was a symbol of her hard work, something she had earned and looked forward to having. I remember how excited she was when the package finally arrived. She'd been talking about it for weeks, carefully planning every penny she'd spent to buy it. But not even a day after it came, it was gone. Just like that, Zoe came to me in tears, telling me that the makeup kit had disappeared, and she was sure that Olivia or Sloane had taken it. That was it. That was the final straw. I had tried to be patient. I had tried to be understanding. But this was too much. That night, I installed a lock on Zoe's door. Enough was enough. She needed to feel like her room, her sanctuary, was truly hers again. It wasn't just about the makeup. It was about her having control over her own space. Of course, Sammy and my wife weren't happy about it. Sammy made some comment about how I was overreacting, and my wife was upset, saying I was creating division in the house. But I couldn't stand by anymore. I had to protect my daughter. Now, weeks later, I'm still standing by that decision. I refuse to take the lock off until they move out. But sometimes, late at night, I find myself wondering if I've gone too far. Am I wrong for doing this? Or am I just being the kind of father my daughter needs right now? The makeup kit had been a big deal to Zoe. It wasn't just any ordinary set of cosmetics. This was something she had carefully picked out after saving for weeks. She had always admired makeup. The way it could transform a face, the colors that could be blended like a painter's palette. When she finally got her hands on that kit, it felt like a small victory, a step toward the independence she craved. It was her first taste of something more grown-up, and she cherished it. The shades were perfect for her, every brush selected with purpose, each item more valuable to her than just its price tag. It was more than makeup, it was a piece of her identity. And then one afternoon, it all came crashing down. Zoe came home from school, her usual routine playing out, heading straight to her room to unwind. But the moment she opened the door, she froze. There on her bed lay her precious makeup kit, but it was no longer the neat, organized set she had left. It was a disaster. The eyeshadows were mixed together in a muddy mess, foundation smeared across the compact, brushes bent, powders broken and spilled. The entire kit was destroyed, and with it, all the excitement and pride she had felt when she bought it. It didn't take long for Zoe to realize what had happened. Her cousin Sloane, who had been staying with us, had taken the makeup without asking, used it carelessly, and then left it in ruins. Zoe's heart sank. She knew Sloane had a habit of helping herself to other people's things, but this time, it felt personal. This wasn't just a small, replaceable item. This was something Zoe had worked hard for, something she had saved for and looked forward to owning. Now, it was worthless. Tears filled her eyes as she brought the destroyed kit to me. I'll never forget the look on her face, this blend of sadness, betrayal, and frustration. Sloane just took it, she told me, her voice small and filled with hurt. She didn't even ask, and now it's ruined. Zoe had always been good about sharing, but this was different. This was hers. I could see how much this mattered to her, how much it hurt her that someone would take something so important to her without any care or thought. That was it for me. I couldn't stand by any longer. Not when my daughter's feelings were being dismissed time and time again. I went to my wife, expecting her to understand, to finally see that this was about more than just a misunderstanding. I wanted her to recognize how unfair it was to Zoe, to take a stand with me. But when I told her what happened, her response left me stunned. She said she would ask Sloane to apologize. That was it. No real consequences. No discussion of making things right. Just a half-hearted apology. I couldn't believe it. An apology was not going to fix the destroyed makeup kit, and it certainly wasn't going to repair the damage done to Zoe's trust. I realized then that if I didn't take action, Zoe would never feel like she had control over her own space. So, that night, I went out and bought a lock for her door. I wasn't going to let this keep happening. Zoe needed privacy, and if her belongings weren't going to be respected, I would make sure she had a way to protect them. When I installed the lock, I saw a flicker of relief in Zoe's eyes. She finally had something she hadn't had in a long time, a sense of security. For the first time in months, she could close her door and know that what was inside her room would stay hers. But it didn't take long for everything to spiral. The next morning, Sam, my brother-in-law, saw the lock and immediately lost his temper. He stormed into the living room, demanding to know why Zoe's door was locked, why I was treating his daughters like criminals. Sloane and Olivia, his daughters, were upset too, acting like I had done something terribly wrong. Sam confronted me, saying, "My girls aren't thieves. This is what sisters do. They borrow each other's things." He went on, insisting that Zoe was overreacting, that she could just buy another makeup kit. He even made a comment about how Zoe shouldn't be using adult makeup at her age, like she was in the wrong for wanting something nice. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Instead of recognizing that Sloane had taken something without asking and ruined it, Sam turned the blame on Zoe. He made it seem like Zoe was at fault for wanting to protect her things, for having something of value that Sloane felt entitled to. It was infuriating. I snapped. I told Sam, flat out, that this was none of his business, that this was between me and my wife, and he needed to back off. But my wife, instead of backing me up, sided with him. She was angry that I had put a lock on Zoe's door, saying it sent the wrong message to her nieces, that it made them feel unwelcome. She said I was treating them like criminals, and that by locking the door, I was preventing the girls from spending time together like family should. But I wasn't willing to budge. I told her, plain and simple, that the lock was staying until Sam and his daughters were out of our house. That's when things really blew up. My wife accused me of trying to drive her brother and nieces away, of not caring about family. She said her family would never forgive me for this, and that I was being completely unreasonable. But I wasn't about to let her rewrite history. I reminded her that when Sam lost his house, we were the ones who took him in. When her family refused to help, it was us who opened our doors. I wasn't the bad guy here. I just wanted Zoe to feel safe and respected in her own home. Since that argument, the house has been a cold, silent place. Sam and his daughters won't speak to me. My wife barely says a word, and Zoe has retreated to her room, where she finally feels like she has some control. I know this whole situation has hurt her, but I also know that she's relieved. For the first time in a long time, she doesn't have to worry about her cousins barging into her space, taking her things. But the tension in the house is unbearable, like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. And now I'm left wondering, did I go too far? Was I wrong for putting a lock on Zoe's door? Could I have handled things differently? Part of me knows I was just trying to protect my daughter, trying to give her the respect she deserves. But another part of me wonders if there was a better way, if I could have found some middle ground. Maybe I should have tried talking to Sam again, tried to reason with him. But after months of being dismissed and ignored, I felt like I had no other choice. Now I'm stuck in a house filled with silence and resentment, waiting for the inevitable blow-up. But for now, the lock stays. Zoe's privacy matters to me, and I'm not willing to compromise on that. Not anymore. Am I the bad guy for refusing to take the lock off? Maybe. But as a father, I have to protect my daughter. And if that makes me the villain in this story, so be it.